My name's Maya. I'll be introducing various speakers throughout the conference, so you might see me here and there. But more important at the moment is this is Rick Archer. And I assume that most of you know who he is, but I'm going to take a minute and read a little bit about him. He is the creator of the online program Buddha at the Gas Pump, which he started in the fall of 2009. He's interviewed hundreds of spiritually awakening people, a new interview each week with both well-known and unknown people from a variety of backgrounds and traditions. And what I somehow did not know until now is that you have an extensive background in TM, and you worked for 25 years as a TM trainer, basically, around the world. And he also has a master's degree in Vedic studies. At this point, Rick is no longer associated with the TM organization, as his perspective has become too eclectic and independent to affiliate exclusively with any organization.
In other words, they booted me out.
I was hoping you'd get the inside scoop on people. Okay. So the main thing I want to convey is that the fact that he has interviewed so many people gives him a totally unique perspective that's even, in my mind, more rare than going to see an awakened teacher give a talk. It's like he has a perspective on the unfolding of this whole sort of culture that I personally am very looking forward to hearing about. So, welcome, Rick.
Thanks, Lana. I hope I can convey that perspective, or that I actually have a perspective, I'm not sure, but I guess I do. So there's still more room if people want to come up, room on the floor or whatever. I don't want people to have to stand the whole time. So I really appreciate the turnout. See a lot of people I know, a number of people that I've interviewed, which means my strategy worked. I figured I'd interview a lot of people, so if I ever got to give a 20-minute talk to stand, I'd have a good turnout. So most of the people here, I'm sure, have been involved in some sort of spiritual pursuit. You know, you've been with this or that teacher, or you've been meditating, or you've done something over the years. And how many of you have found that when you embarked on a spiritual pursuit, or kind of turned your attention in that direction, things started to happen that you wouldn't have expected? You know, like you begin to get some kind of support or encouragement from, quote unquote, the universe, and things started to just flow for you. Nice synchronicities and coincidences started happening. Many times I see little hands kind of going like that. Okay, good. That has certainly been my experience from back in the 60s when I first learned to meditate, and it was very much the experience when I started this show. There's a saying in the Vedas someplace or other that says the riches seek out him who is awake. And the word riches means impulses of intelligence that reside in the transcendent field and that are responsible for the manifestation and governance of the universe. And one of my perspectives is, and certainly shared by many other people, is that there's a sort of an evolutionary impulse or imperative that governs the universe. The whole thing is one big giant evolution machine, as far as I can see it, which has as its purpose the making of ultimate reality a living reality, rather than merely an abstract, unmanifest reality. A living reality that can talk and speak and breathe and know itself in a manifest form. And from what I can see, there's something more to that than there would have been to just mere flat unboundedness which never had manifested. So if one puts oneself in the service of that evolutionary impulse, the impulses of intelligence which govern the universe say, hey boys, we've got a live one, let's give him some juice. You know? You get support. Things start to just work out nicely. So that was my experience. I conceived of this show in a very small way initially. I live in a town where a lot of people meditate, and a lot of my friends were having significant awakenings after decades of meditation, and they would maybe say something about that to other friends, and more often than not, they'd get shot down. Oh, you're just Joe Schmo. I know you. You have this simple job or this, problem with your teenage son or something. How could you possibly be awakened? There's this sort of concept that awakening is this high and mighty, lofty, profound thing that ordinary people can't achieve. And so people who would make such pronouncements to their friends would very often stifle the desire to share. And so I was seeing this disconnect between all these people I know who really had a lot going on inside, and others who thought it would never happen to them. So I thought, why not kind of have a radio show on my little local radio station, which has a 10-mile radius, in which I interview some of these people so that their peers can hear that something good is happening, and maybe they'll get encouraged and get a little bit more confident about their own experience. So I approached the radio station. I even did a little pilot, which you'll see if you go back and watch the very first interview I did on Batgap. And the radio station didn't want to do it. I said, what is the problem? You live in this is a community where 3,000 out of 10,000 total population are meditating. What could be a bigger hit? But they didn't want to do it. So for about 3 months, I kept sort of pushing them and needling them. And finally, some friend of mine said to me, are you crazy? 10-mile radius? Put it on the internet. There's a big world out there. You're thinking too small. So I thought, duh, okay. And so I started to learn things that I needed to learn in order to do that, which involved all kinds of technical stuff about how to create a blog and how to actually record Skype conversations and all kinds of technical challenges and things. I was helped in great part by a dear friend whom I haven't seen since 1972, who was my best friend in high school, who's done all the video post-production for all these shows without any request for compensation or anything. And there have been a lot of other people like that too. There's a translation and transcription team now translating into various languages, and there's a guy who coordinates the sending of equipment from one guest to the next and does a pre-show check to make sure that stuff works, and all sorts of wonderful people have come forward to help, and I really appreciate that. So in any case, that's why I started the thing. And as far as perspectives from having interviewed all these people, let me go through some notes that I wrote mostly on the plane. And they seem a little pedantic and academic when I read them now, and so I hope this doesn't get dry. But if at any point you have a question as I'm speaking, feel free to just ask it, and I'll just go with the flow and interrupt what I'm saying, and we'll address your question. So I guess the first question, one perspective that I've gained is that there seems to be a wide range of understandings about what awakening actually is. And I don't think that we're all speaking the same language. And I hate the fact that people aren't able to get in, or they're having to stand and there's a bunch of space up here. If the people in the aisle wanted to move up some, then all these people who are standing could get in the aisle and there'd be more room. My understanding of awakening is that it's not a black-white, on-off, sort of thing. There are many degrees of it, and many degrees of clarity. Now, the absolute itself, there can't be degrees of that. It's wholeness, it's oneness. But the living realization of it, there could be infinite gradations in terms of one's ability to have that appreciation. You've all heard the Upanishadic sayings, I am that, thou art that, oh, this is that. There's actually a Beach Boys song that goes with the lyrics. You've probably heard the song. So, full realization, if there's such a thing, would be the experience, living as that reality, being a walking universe, having the totality as one's identity, and having everything, knowing experientially that everything is contained within that totality. That, and not conceptually, mind you, but experientially, as an unshakable status of experience. But, you know, that's full realization. And that's probably somewhat of a rare thing, but it's, you know, not unprecedented. We see scriptural accounts and people like Ramana and all who describe their experience in those terms. But most of us, you know, we're progressing toward that, I would say. And some people object to notions of progress, levels, even practices. You know, they say, well, practices are only going to reinforce the notion of a practicer. And if you're already that, why would you need to practice to become that which you already are? And they're right, you know, paradoxically. It doesn't make sense that you need to practice to be something that you already are, or do anything to be something that you already are. But for most people who first, you know, delve into this whole thing, notions of being the totality and so on are just that, notions. They're intellectual understandings, they're concepts. And a concept of what we're talking about here is no more satisfying ultimately than standing on a sidewalk reading a restaurant menu and expecting to get nourished by what's being served inside the restaurant. Yes?
I'm curious, have you ever had a guest when you talk to them, your very nature, by virtue of their presence, shifts, and the questions you thought you had, you wanted to ask them, change or transform or be quiet entirely?
Almost every time. I don't take a lot of notes when I do this. I do listen to maybe 6 hours, 10 hours of other interviews with the person and YouTube videos and stuff, usually while I'm riding my bike or cutting the grass or washing the dishes and stuff. And if they have a book, I spend my evenings reading their book. But I don't take too many notes, maybe just a few sketchy ones, but I get to know the person. And I feel like by the time I interview them, I feel like I'm their friend, sort of, even though I may never have actually spoken to them yet. And so when I actually do it, I just kind of fly by the seat of my pants and rely upon the appropriate questions to bubble up, you know. And as I'm listening and talking to the person, questions will be bubbling as they're speaking, and they kind of are rearranging themselves in the back of my mind, and then when the person finally comes to a pause, you know, whichever question is in the front of the line gets asked next.
And you're good at it.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I often talk too much. Totally confess to that. I was listening to I have 5 minutes left, see? Proves the point. I was listening to an interview on the plane that I had done with Unmani 3 years ago, and I thought, God, would you shut up? And me, not her. Anyway, any more questions before I go back to my dry notes? Yes?
How have you seen the awakening community evolve?
She said, how have you seen the awakening community evolve?
In, let's say, at least since you've been doing the interviews.
I think it's evolving. I remember I interviewed Sharon Landreth in the spring down at a retreat that she did in Missouri that I attended, and that was mostly what we talked about. But I think probably people are acquiring a more nuanced view of awakening and spirituality, less of a sort of a black and white view. And tonight at 9 o'clock in Monterey Room, maybe, I'm moderating a panel with Amodama Jivan and Susanna Marie and T. Proctor about embodiment, or well, I think the word integration is a good synonym. I mean, this kind of harkens back to what I was saying a few minutes ago, that, you know, the ultimate reality is what it is, but it's really all about our being able to live it, and to live it while having jobs and raising kids or whatever else we have to do. And that is a process, you know, that has to grow as you go along. And you know, there are many, we could almost speak in terms of, you know, pure consciousness being infused into all the various channels of our life. And you've all heard Ken Wilber's idea of lines of development. And I've seen a number of examples of people who were just off the charts in terms of development of consciousness, but whose other lines of development, or at least some of them, are rather stunted. And so I think that there's kind of a wider appreciation of that point and of the need to become more holistically developed human beings. And I also feel that the overemphasis on I am not a human being, I am not a person, and all that isn't terribly helpful in that regard. Yes?
Do you see any correlation between individuals' physical health and well-being and their so-called state of consciousness?
Oh, I think there's definitely a correlation between the physiology and the state of consciousness, or the development of enlightenment. I mean, the physiology is like an instrument through which consciousness is lived, through which experiences are had. And if the instrument, this was a realization I had when I was 18, sitting on the bed in my father's basement on LSD, reading a Zen book. And I thought, as I read the book, I thought, whoa, these guys are really serious, and I'm just screwing around. And if I keep screwing around like this, I'm going to damage this instrument. I'm stuck in it for the rest of my life, and I don't want to be stuck in a damaged instrument. So I thought, that's it. I'm going to stop taking drugs, I'm going to learn transcendental meditation, and I'll see what happens. And so that's where it went. Yeah. Oh, but just to finish your question, there are obviously examples of people like Ramana Maharshi, who died of cancer, Nisargadatta, who died of cancer, Jesus Christ, who died of torture, who I don't think lost their state of consciousness despite the physiology being destroyed. So once it's established, it's established. It looks like I have a blank slate now. Time is up. I'll tell you what, well, another 5 minutes, is that okay? Okay, great.
Do you live on the donations you get for your show?
Not yet. She asked if I live on the donations I get from my show. I have a day job. I do search engine optimization, which means helping people sell widgets. But I'm self-employed, so I can moderate the amount of time I spend at that. And I'm down to about 3.5 hours a day of that, which unfortunately still takes up a lot of my productive energy. And the rest of the time I'm doing back-up stuff or, living life. And I'm hoping that the rate things are going, by next year I'll be down to 2 hours a day of that, but I'm looking forward to being none of that and all of this. Yeah?
How much are you able to let go of your own knowledge, opinions, etc. in interviewing people?
Not enough. If you listen to a lot of these things, you'll hear me making some of the same points over and over again, using the same analogies, quoting the same quotes. And, I have a limited repertoire, and I try to stay out of the way as much as I can and just tune into the guest, but I'm not perfect at it. Yeah.
How has your practice or non-practice changed taking in all of these various recommendations?
My spiritual practice and talking to all these people and all, it's really a kick in the pants every time I interview somebody. I really feel enlivened and kind of, it's, you ever see one of those, when you're in high school, did you ever see one of those little movies about the way amoebas function, and they kind of send out these little blobs and they incorporate a little particle, and then the particle kind of becomes part of them. So I kind of feel like an amoeba every week, interviewing some new person, tuning into them. I feel like something is added as a result of seeing their perspective to whatever extent I can. Yeah?
What are some of the similarities that you find between all these interviews, or consistently?
Boy, I don't know. I'm not sure how to answer that question. I'll have to think about it.
How about the differences?
Well, everybody's a unique expression, and in my opinion, it's all good. I interviewed a guy who's one of the top leaders of the Hare Krishna movement, Radhanath Swami, and I'm working on trying to interview Sam Harris, who's one of the renowned atheists. And as far as I'm concerned, if the universe is one big evolution machine, then everyone's serving their purpose, And I think it's nice that there's such a plethora of teachers out there because everybody's going to resonate with somebody. And you know, we have a human tendency to want to say, my teacher is the best, or my practice is the best, or whatever. I would say that, you know, whatever you happen to be doing is the best for you at that time. And if it no longer is, you'll probably feel like doing something else. So, yeah.
If we can only take one thing away from this session before you finish today, because it's all too short, what is the one thing that you want to make sure we hear?
Or go to batgap.com. She's saying donate. I don't like to be too heavy on that, you know, it's like, but if you feel inclined, that'd be great. And you know what? I mean, enough people watch, there's like about 170,000 views and audio downloads a month now. And, you know, if everybody gave like 10 cents for each of those views or downloads, I'd be doing this full time and I wouldn't have to do the day job. So, you know, $5 a month, because not everybody is not going to do anything, but $5 a month, if enough people did that, you know, be cruising. Yeah. Yes.
Metaphorically, do you think that pain improves hearing?
That pain improves hearing? I don't think I can answer that question, at least not in the limited time available, or even if I had more time, I'm not sure I'd know. So I really have to stop now. You know, there's a really great talk in 5 minutes up in the hall, which I kind of want to catch. I also would kind of like to continue this conversation, like go out on the patio or something. And, I'm a little conflicted about that, not sure what to do. But, pardon me?
Find you.
Yeah, lunch. Oh, let me just make a couple of announcements of things that are going to be happening, and maybe this will help. First of all, yesterday, Francis Bennett and I went down to Adi Shanti's house and had an incredible conversation for 2 hours, which was just like, oh God, this is so great. And so that'll be up on the web later, probably in the week, so make sure to catch that. And then I mentioned I'll be doing this thing tonight around 9. Also out on the patio after lunch, I'm going to moderate a little off-the-program, impromptu kind of panel discussion with Menas Kapatos, Igor Kufayev, and Sally Kempton about Kashmir Shaivism. So if you feel like, you won't find it in the program because we're just doing it, so if you feel like coming to that, feel free. We'll be out there on the patio someplace, one of those little couches.
What time?
After lunch, maybe around 1:30 at the latest. You'll see us setting up out there.
There'll be more room.
Yeah, there'll be more room. And then maybe after that, if people feel like hanging around and asking some questions and all, but I also want to go to Adam Hall's talk, which is at 3:20, right? In this room?
Yep.
All right. So I wish I could take more time. I wish I had a whole like hour or something, because this would be fun. But I have to quit. So thank you very much.